Hi everyone. Today I'm talking to Zarna Kamdar. She is a finance professional and she is a coach with Fit Banker. She's a mom to two amazing active kids and she has been creating awareness on the topic of perimenopause, and that's what we'll be doing today. Thank you, Zarna.
Thank you, Ruthie, for having me here.
No worries. So how did you get into perimenopause, talking about it, creating awareness about it?
So it was sort of, I almost fell into it. I was experiencing perimenopause symptoms, and while there was research outside, people didn't talk about it. There was so much hesitation about talking about it. I was lucky. My mother is a very open and broad-minded person, and because when she was going through perimenopause and menopause, I could witness it. I was with my parents at the time. I actually could recall what she was going through and then say, okay, I can now tell that I'm probably in perimenopause. But as I researched, yes, in the Western world, there is quite a bit of conversation, but I found that it is happening and it's increased in recent couple of years, in Kenya especially, but still, I felt there was a need to do more. And so I just said I would start talking about it.
Oh, that's so awesome. And you've done quite a few talks,
Yeah.
and that's awesome. That's amazing, because this
Thank you.
topic needs so much awareness.
I agree.
Because when I talk to my aunts and my mom and everyone, they actually don't even know perimenopause. Like the conversation just starts and ends with menopause. So what is perimenopause?
So perimenopause is essentially your transition into menopause. Now, different people refer to different timelines, but generally, if you look at medical websites, say like the NHS of UK, they talk about perimenopause lasting an average of 4 years, but anywhere between 2 to 8 years. There's some who now say it's even 10 years. But imagine that's a decade of our lives spent in this transition stage, and nobody wants to talk about it.
Yeah. Imagine like feeling so confused as to what's wrong with me.
Absolutely.
For 10 years.
Absolutely. So, what I find is at least we are great in women's health in that there's been a lot of talk, and we all know how to transition our daughters or explain to them about the puberty stage, that transition stage. And then there is a lot about pregnancy, what to expect when you're expecting, post delivery, what are you doing with, your care, self-care. The baby's care is one thing, but self-care.
Exactly.
There's a lot that's happened, and people talk about it. There are books, there's enough things on the internet. And then you come to perimenopause and people don't even realize they're in perimenopause. So
true story. I didn't know I was going through perimenopause up until last year, like 6 months ago only.
Yeah.
But now when I look back, and as you said, like more research, when I look at, more material, I realize, I've been going through it for the past 2-3 years.
Yes. And that is the normal thing that happens. Women don't even realize they're going through perimenopause. So I think so what is perimenopause? It's the transition stage. What is it characterized by? You still have your monthly period or your menstruation. It may not be monthly anymore.
Okay.
The cycle can get irregular. It could become longer than month. It can become more frequent. Do
you know how many times I thought I was pregnant?
Yes. By the way, you're still fertile during perimenopause. It does happen. I know most studies show that your fertility is declining, and most of us enter perimenopause in our 40s, when all studies do show your fertility is declining. But it's declining.
It's still there.
You're still fertile because you're having your monthly period. So there is an egg being released.
Yeah.
And so this is something, and which is why, I don't know if you've had that experience or seen it, but, about 20 years ago, it would be quite common for, the elder mother in the house and the younger one to be pregnant at the same time. And that's literally because the older one may have been in perimenopause, or even sometimes they think they're in menopause, but actually they're not, because there's a misunderstanding as to what menopause is. And then they find they're pregnant. God is great. And, and we move on. So perimenopause, you have an irregularity. You can have a lot of the other symptoms that happen in menopause. But there are three key things that distinguish. One, you still have your monthly period. Secondly, your body is producing estrogen, progesterone, which are the two common hormones that we will talk about in today's thing. And thirdly, you're still fertile.
Okay.
Menopause, on the other hand, is when you have gone through a 12-month period without having any menstruation. That's when you're considered to be in menopause. Okay. And menopause is for life. Once you're in menopause for the rest of your life. There is no, with perimenopause, you can be in perimenopause for a while. Okay. And it can go on. But once you're in menopause, you're in menopause.
And you're not fertile at that time.
Yeah, you're not fertile because your body is really not producing estrogen or progesterone on its own. Okay. You're not having any menstruation because you've gone through, so it's literally a year you've not had a period. Now, bear in mind, because in perimenopause, often, your period starts getting staggered. You could almost not have a period for 9 months. Then if you have one, the count starts again. So your menopause is really technically and from a medical standpoint, that's how they see it. I'm not a doctor. I will give that disclaimer. Yes. This is what I've read, and this is what the general consensus is on it, that this is when you're in menopause. Okay. 12 months without a period, you're in menopause. And usually, if they do tests, they would find there is no or very minimal levels of estrogen or progesterone in the body that the body is producing. And yes, then you're no longer fertile because your ovaries are no longer releasing eggs.
Okay, fair enough. Now let's talk about the fun symptoms of perimenopause.
The joys of it.
Yeah, because why I'm saying fun and joy is because every day when I wake up, especially the 1 week leading up to my periods, I don't know who or what I'm waking up as. It's a surprise.
A surprise to you as well, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So, there are a lot of symptoms, but if we can look at it this way, and again, I'm not a doctor, but I've read about this. I attend talks. I attended one even last week in Nairobi. There are a lot of online forums and talks as well. Now, what happens during perimenopause? So essentially, your body is, or at least your ovaries are starting to slow down.
Okay.
And if you think about your younger days, there was always, and there still is, during perimenopause, a conversation between your brain and your ovaries. Usually we think of it as happening on a monthly basis, but it's fairly constant.
Yeah.
Now, there are estrogen receptors throughout your body. So in various organs and everything. Now, what is that conversation between the brain and the ovary? The brain is telling the ovary, you need to release an egg. This is the time for it. And then when the egg comes, estrogen is released. Estrogen is the hormone that allows the egg to be released, then allows the uterine lining to thicken. Progesterone helps stabilize that effort of estrogen. But, this is in a nutshell. Medical people would be able to explain it a lot better. But what is happening is that now the brain, as the ovaries are aging, they're not releasing eggs with the same frequency sometimes, or maybe they're doing it more frequently. And then the estrogen production, the brain is giving a signal, the ovary is not responding to that signal the way it's supposed to. So what sometimes happens is, it's like a roller coaster. Sometimes there's less estrogen, sometimes there's more estrogen, and sometimes it's just perfect.
Right? Very rarely do we get to that perfect.
Yeah, but and unfortunately what's happening for us during perimenopause is that it's like this.
Yeah.
So when you say each day you wake up, it's literally, and there are estrogen receptors in your brain.
Yeah.
So when the brain is not getting the estrogen it needs, then naturally it affects you in other ways.
Yeah.
Right? There's estrogen receptors in various organs. We don't have time to go into each of the aspects. So what does happen is brain fog.
Oh my God. Do you know what? The funniest was I put my tea leaves in the refrigerator.
Iced tea.
Oh my God. And the other day, we had to go out for dinner, all of us. I still made dinner at home.
Thinking, everyone's eating at home.
I'm like, I know we have to go out, but there's like 2 people. I mean, that was
Or do you experience the thing of you enter a room knowing you had to get something and suddenly you can't recall what it was?
Yeah.
And you're sort of glancing around the room and thinking, I think I need to go back and retrace my steps and figure out what it was I wanted.
And then you go back, you remember, then you're like, okay, I got it. You go back, you forget. And it's like one way to get our steps in.
One way to get our steps in, right? So the thing to remember is this is completely natural. It's a transition phase. So imagine, we have other hormones in the body and they can all affect. For example, I have hypothyroidism. So which is an underactive thyroid, if my body is not producing enough thyroxine, similar symptoms. I have fatigue, I have brain fog, all of it, because the body, throughout the body, whatever it needs, it's not getting enough.
Okay.
So it's the same thing. It's not getting enough estrogen, but it's a process for a period of time. And at the time when sort of the estrogen finally kind of declines, and then you reach a point of stability, because now the brain knows, I'm not getting estrogen. And remember, we have bodies and brains that adapt if we give it the space to adapt without getting stressed about it.
Yeah.
So if we remember that this is just a phase, it's a transition phase, the brain will adapt eventually. We may not have the sharp memories we had as 20 years old, but we are not going to be in this permanently forgetful and, where you're having a conversation and you know this person really well, and for the life of you, you can't remember the name.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and mid-sentence, you forget what you're saying.
Yes.
You're like, you feel a bit stupid at that time, but it's not our fault.
No.
And we're not alone.
No. In fact, now sometimes when I've been giving a couple of talks and I forget, I actually tell people, sorry guys, this is the perimenopause brain fog. Can someone please help me here? Yeah. And usually that gets a brilliant response because people are like, okay, yes, she needs a little bit of help, and it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah, it's okay. And I love that, empathy from people. Yeah. And we're going to talk about later how we need that more and more. And I think that comes from awareness.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, let's talk about other symptoms. So we've got hot flashes.
Yes.
We've got breast tenderness.
Yes.
We've got, you talked about irregular periods.
Yes.
Bloating.
Yes.
What else? We've got
sweats.
Yeah.
Which is actually the sister to the hot flushes.
Yes.
Yeah. So most women do report hot flushes, and it's like your internal thermostat, because of the estrogen fluctuations, has gone a little haywire. So suddenly you feel really hot. Some women say they feel hot and then they feel chills after. But really, what is that heat that you're feeling is literally your body releasing that heat. And the majority do report it being felt more like upper body and then the face being flushed. I can also tell you that I normally am a person, even in warm weather, will have palms and feet that are cool to the touch.
Oh.
But when I'm having a hot flush, I feel like I can power a whole, generator with with the heat coming out of my body. My hands will be hot, my body will be hot, my feet will be hot, and it feels like I'm radiating heat everywhere,
Yeah.
And then what is the sister to that, as we call it, or the cousin, is you break out into a sweat. But if you think about it, the sweat is body's natural cooling mechanism. So when you're trying to get rid of that heat in the body, it'll sweat.
Oh.
And sometimes, yes, in the middle of the night, you wake up drenched. It happens. Nairobi, I find, is a little less so because our general weather, we don't sweat as much here.
Yes.
The same thing if you were in Mombasa, for example, you'd be drenched all the time.
I don't even want to imagine.
But even in Nairobi, I can tell it's a hot flush because I would have woken up in the night and I've actually changed. And I see this, it's more upper body. My t-shirt, if you're wearing pajamas, the t-shirt is drenched. So the easy one is just keep an extra t-shirt, take this one off, cool down, have a cold shower if you need in the middle of the night, cool yourself down,
and
wear another set of clothes, fresh set, and go back
to sleep.
Try and go back to sleep.
Yeah, because then sleep deprivation is another one.
Yes.
And oh my God, for the life of me, I've been really 2-3 days I won't sleep properly. If I haven't slept, my husband hasn't slept.
Yes.
And then third day, I'll be like, okay, shattered and sleeping. But then not sleeping well, we all know affects the rest of our
The
body,
body, yes.
right?
Yeah.
Fatigue,
Mhm.
putting on weight,
Brain fog.
brain fog. It's like a cycle. It's a loop.
So yes, sleep. I mean, you and I both know as fit bankers, it's one of the 6 pillars of health that we discuss.
Yeah.
It's so important. But again, one of the things about perimenopause and menopause is the key thing, I think, is embrace it. When you are when you and I have both been pregnant, we've dealt with our post delivery sleepless nights and everything. But what was the attitude then? We embraced it.
Because we knew what was coming.
One, we knew what was coming. Two, it's a greater cause. It's only for a period of time.
Yes.
Yeah, that these sleepless nights, these waking up every night, twice a night, thrice a night, is not a lifetime sentence. It's for a period of time. And remember, the body adapts. I'm not saying new mothers don't have brain fog and but with the right rest and the right attitude and realizing that you're nurturing life and bringing it up. What we need to remember is we need to nurture ourselves as well. So remember 2 things. It's a transition phase. It is not a life sentence. So yes, there could be 2-3 nights where your sleep is affected. And if you're constantly having insomnia, go to a doctor is the first thing.
Exactly.
In fact, if you suspect you're perimenopausal, your first point of call has to be book your appointment with your gynecologist. I can't emphasize this enough because some of the symptoms of perimenopause, the best news you'll get is you go to your gynecologist and they tell you, yeah, you're perimenopausal, or they tell you you need to do a test to confirm, but you're perimenopausal. That is the good news. But some of the symptoms could be of something else.
Yes.
And we think we're perimenopausal, but actually we're not. It's something else, which could be worse, or it could be better, or it could be just another temporary thing. We don't know. But the first point is always go to your gynecologist, talk to them. You need to talk to them. And then you realize, the gynecologist will confirm either based on sometimes just hearing your symptoms. Sometimes they do tell you to do tests. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of studies. Some show the tests are reliable. Some say they're not. But whichever way, I think with the experience that many of them have, certainly my gynecologist, they can tell straight away, yes, you are perimenopausal. But nevertheless, although in my consultation, she said, I'm convinced, still, I want you to do a couple of tests just to ensure. It wasn't a blood test, but just do a uterine ultrasound, do a vaginal ultrasound and all, just to make sure it's not something else. Because what I was telling her is whereas previously my frequency of my period increased, but also whereas previously it would be a 3 to 4 day and relatively heavy thing, it had become 6 to 7 days lighter, and the last 3-4 days was just spotting. So she says sometimes spotting is another issue. So, we need to ensure. So, I'm just explaining a couple of the tests, but it's not that that's the test everyone is told to do. And there were 3-4 other tests. I forget the medical names, but I was told to do.
But I agree with you. It's better to know that there's nothing wrong with the body than to just assume and go on.
Exactly.
Right? Like yesterday, I did my full blood works and full abdominal ultrasound.
Perfect.
Just to make sure that this is nothing else.
Exactly.
And obviously, going to the gynecologist, doing the hormonal, tests
profile
and stuff.
Everything.
I would highly as well recommend.
There is no question in my mind that has to be the first step. Yeah. We can read as much as we want, but if you're not a medical person yourself, and even if you are a medical person yourself, you need another person to tell you. You may think you know what your body is going through, but you don't know. Yeah. Sometimes you need another doctor. Doctors go to doctors.
Of course. There's a reason.
There's a reason for it. So, the first step is always get it checked. Perimenopause is the good news. It's what your body is naturally going to transition through. So, okay, I'm perimenopausal. Now
we accept it.
We accept it. Acceptance is the first thing. Yes, many think, it's a sign of aging. My fertility is going down. And, traditionally, I understand, like if you think about maybe a few centuries ago, it was largely procreation. And so a woman would kind of almost think, so what am I going to do now that I'm no longer fertile? And it may cause...
What is my use?
Exactly. But in this day and age, when as women, we do so much, you know. And even back then, you know, if you see ancient tribes, there was such respect for older women, such respect, you know. And we need to remember that. Why was there that respect? It was not because they were not fertile. It was because of the wisdom that has come with age. It's because of, you know, the love and care they have nurtured towards their tribe, which has allowed that tribe to flourish.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of love and respect for them. But in this day and age, when women are out there doing so many things, we need to remember we have a purpose beyond procreation. Procreation is great. If we are blessed to have children, or we are blessed to have, whether biologically or otherwise, and we have had that chance at nurturing them, that's great.
So I want to go back to that point where you say when women, started going through perimenopause and feeling like, what is the use? I'm not good enough, or going into that victim mode. Again, that's one of the symptoms of perimenopause. Even if I know myself to be a positive person, but last year, August, for a month, I did not get out of that couch.
Yeah.
I did not get out of the house. My thoughts were so negative, and oh my God, I could not recognize myself or my thoughts. Like, this is not me.
Yeah.
But it's still, there was no control. There was nothing I could do about it. So depression is a symptom of perimenopause. Obviously, anxiety. Yes. So just want to bring awareness and attention to that, because it can happen to anyone.
It can. It happens to a lot of women without them realizing it. You feel low, you're moody. Everyone in your family thinks, oh my God, when did mom become monster mom? Or who, the men might be thinking, really, was this the person I married? What happened to her? But I also want to draw attention, for most of us in our 40s, early 50s, going through perimenopause and then afterwards menopause, because a lot of these symptoms continue in menopause as well, before they finally kind of stabilize, is we need to acknowledge ourselves for what we're going through. Many of us are career women, so there are job pressures. Okay, we're raising children. For a lot of us at this age, our children are in their teens or preteens.
Bless us.
So they're going through their own hormonal things and having their, adjustments to do. And at the same time, you are going through your hormonal things and you are having your adjustments, and they're bound to be clashes. And accept it for what it is. It's the drama of family life since the beginning of time, I guess.
And in this, I've realized, men listening to this podcast, you guys, that's where you come in.
Yes. Tell your wife you'll cook that day.
Or at least just that I understand.
I understand. I agree. And then remember, there's another thing also going on. A lot of us, you are there, I'm there. We are taking care of parents, in-laws who are aging, facing their medical challenges often. It's happening.
Yes.
So there are stresses from this different angles. And the question is, what can we do to ensure that, yes, we are experiencing it, acknowledge it. It's always good to acknowledge, because if you acknowledge, you can then take action to deal with it. What is that action? Do you need to consult your doctor? Do you need to reach out to your sister? And I don't mean just a biological sister, another woman who will just have a rant. It's great to have a rant. Go for a coffee, have a rant. Don't have the cake. We'll come to that. Go for the coffee. Go out for the coffee, go out for the smoothie, go take a walk, whatever it is. But reach out to people, talk about it.
So you're saying this is where your friends and family call out. Like, I kid you not, 2-3 weeks ago, I was going through this really down moment, for 2 days. One day I reached out to one friend. We went Karura for a walk.
Perfect.
That day, 5 kilometers I finished. I usually finish in an hour. That day it took 2.5 hours.
That's okay.
Fatigue really kicked in, but we talked and walked. Second day, it still hadn't gone. I reached out to another friend. I just ranted on for half an hour on the phone, and I cried for no good reason. Everything in my life
Emotions
is good.
are up and down.
And bless her, she came home with a bunch of flowers, and we sat and talked. And within half an hour,
You were fine.
I felt so good. And obviously, the next day I got my periods and everything was flowery, so to say.
No,
But your friends
agree with
and
you.
family,
It's so important, and it's important to realize not that you can reach out, you should reach out.
and what this friend said is like, I don't know what you're going through, but I want you to know whenever you need me, just call. Because remember, everybody's busy in their lives.
Yes,
And they don't know what you're going through unless,
you tell them.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So reach out to
Yeah,
anybody who is, around you, there
Yeah.
for you. Talk to them. Let them know what you're going through, right?
yes.
Cool. And you said about cake.
Well, you alluded to one of the things called weight gain. So I think 2-3 things physically, and a lot of studies kind of point to the same thing. Yes, there is some weight gain that happens, but more worryingly, there is a weight distribution, and that's why suddenly you might find middle-aged women suddenly complaining about belly fat when they've not really had much, and it's even unfortunately called the menobelly. I know. So you think, why give a term like that? But anyway, it happens. And you don't want that fat accumulating long term. If it's purely for that transition phase and then you're dealing with it, it's fine. But visceral fat, which you and I know, the fat coating your organs, that can increase, and we need to take care. Now, that is in terms of the fat. So yes, there could be some weight gain. Some women don't have any. Some women, many I think, do have some level of weight gain. But then the question comes to, what are you doing to manage it, right?
There's so much we can do.
There is so much we can. You and I, as fit banker coaches and fit bankers, we've been stamped many times over.